den, já vás tady všechny co nejsrdečněji vítám. Dnešní událost se bude hrát v angličtině, takže já přeskočím do angličtiny. So I am glad to have the opportunity to welcome in the first the director of the National Gallery.
He's the first.
Yes, but I would like to...
No.
Director of the National Gallery, Mr. Jiří, and thank to him for arrangements of today's meeting.
Well, this was so easy. I just gave you a call and that's it.
And I said yes. That's all what we did. But now it's the other great moment to say that I am also glad to welcome artist Mr. Ai Weiwei in the occasion of his solo exhibition, which he is preparing for the trade Paris of the National Gallery. The opening will be on the Thursday, like a grand opening, so all of you are welcome to see this opening. And because we have the kind of the limited time, so I don't really speak so long. The moderator of the open discuss, because Mr. Ai Weiwei would like to open discuss from the beginning to you. So it means that it's up to you to ask him whatever you want to know from the field of art and politics and so on. And moderator of this discussion will be Tomáš Pospíšil. Hello.
Thank you. The microphone is working. That is great. Let me sit down. As it was said, the whole event will be held in English. We've got about 1 hour. We'll go straight to Q&A. And I've got the privilege to ask the first question, if I may, to Mr. Ai Weiwei. I'll ask him the most difficult question I could come up with, but I believe it is a crucial question for an artist. How do you know if your work is successful? When are you satisfied? When do you feel that you achieved what you wanted to achieve? Isn't it quite difficult, especially with the type of work you do?
Should I use this?
Or you can use this one.
Okay. Sorry. Hi. It's very nice to be with you, and I think to directly answer your questions make this discussion more interesting, so anybody can ask any questions. And about the first question, how do I feel successful, or a work to be successful? Actually, I never had that feeling. The work for me is I'm very much like an engine and pulling a truck or a train. I don't know exactly how far I went, or if there's an end of the road, or it's going to be broke. I don't know, but as long as I still can run, that's fine. It's very hard to measure which work is right or wrong. It's all had a very special meaning to me at the moment I decide to do it, and maybe later it's not so relevant. But I start with curiosity and some kind of drive there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And please, we will have Blanca to carry the microphone around. And colleague on the other side, please, you are welcome to place your questions. Nobody is interested?
Okay. I would like to ask a question. How do you perceive the world we live in nowadays? How would you describe it? The situation in the world? And what... Do you understand me? Or should I repeat?
Maybe a little further. So
Okay, I try again. How would you describe the world we live nowadays in? The contemporary situation in the world? Political situation? And what can art do with it? How can art react? How should?
how
Could you get it?
the situation in the world?
Yeah, how could you define the situation in the world?
I think everybody have a very different world. That's why the world is interesting. And I only can talk for myself. I used to be an artist, like most students or beginning of artists, only concerns about my own agenda or trying to find some language. And I failed. I feel I don't have that kind of drive anymore, and also I don't think other people would even care. And so I stopped for a very long time, and till about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I had a chance to make my first exhibition, and that time I was already an architect. So I said, I was much relaxed, and even after 12 years in the United States, never had one little exhibition, but never really can be called anything like successful. So I gave up. I said, it's okay, you don't have to be successful. You just have to be, you call yourself an artist because you're not something else. And that's an excuse not to do something else, actually. Until very late, in 2002 or 2005, I had a chance to have a show. So then I come back to art. And but I'm more involved with internet. That time I get my blog and I write every day. I spend 90% time on internet, which I really feel is very interesting for me. I never can imagine expression can be easily communicate and can have very dense communication with anybody almost, and somebody I don't know. And so I make a lot of writings, argument, and even performance, some kind of strange ideas on internet, which I'm kind of lucky because China is, that time is very naive with internet. They don't even know how to stop somebody like me. So I had a great time. I celebrate every day of the day. It's like I have a ride on internet every day. Tens of thousands of people enjoy that moment. And today we cannot do it anymore. China have very sophisticated so-called Great Firewall, which can really, a lot of internet police can pick up every sentence and censor every vocabulary. So I enjoyed about 5 years on internet. Then my blog, everything being shut down. My name cannot even being typed in Chinese language on internet, or come out words like illegal words being used or sensitive matter. So, but internet got me very involved with society, and gave me this kind of excitement, come out ideas in relating to so-called my world. And of course, it also bring me a lot of troubles, like confrontation with the state police, secret police, detention, and self-detention, many, and put me in kind of jail, disappear. So I got naturally involved because I naively believe my work can change, can easily change something, especially with young people. And that's how maybe because my attitude, maybe because I enjoy this type of education, communication. And after a year and a half ago, I have a chance to come to Berlin, Germany. I start to pay attention to international politics. So what the focus is on the migrants and the refugee situation. So we start to, it's also come very naturally. It's never be by design. Many things happen to me is with intuition. I act more like a child, find something very interesting, start to be involved, then find something bigger and bigger, and until I cannot cope with. But last years, we spent a whole year in making a film about refugees. We traveled about 20 nations. And personally, I was in Greece, Turkey, and Syria border, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and Gaza, Africa, and Mexico border. And our team has been many other places, such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq, and a few Calais in France, and Italy. We have about 20 crew teams to shooting the film, and we shoot almost 1,000 hours of footage. Now we just finished the post-production. A big cinema film will come out. The name is Human Flow. It will come out in a few months. So of course, if you're interested, you also have a chance to look at it. But all those things are none of them are being designed. It's really, I step into it and I start to care about my feelings, my curiosity, and my willingness to understand more. And of course, during that, I would come up some forms. Normally, we can call it art or art piece. And the piece going to show in National Gallery is one of the largest single objects, which is specially designed for the space. So that's how I acted in my world. But I think everybody can do with their own. I think first you need to have this kind of drive or this kind of curiosity, and then you have to have this kind of eagerness to have your own answer. I think now in the West, in the education, I think Yes, everybody is well informed, very well educated. But there's very little encouragement to make something very special, something really related to your personal experience to come out. And it's too average, what I feel. I also teach. And the students doesn't have this kind of drive. They don't have, everything is so fine. And they said it's very liberal. I said it's very lazy. It's, then that's my impression.
Thank you. And please, more questions? Okay. Over there.
I wondered if you could say a little bit more about the relationship of individual creative expression to wider or collective culture.
Yeah, I from the 1990s, when the Soviet bloc collapsed, the ending of the Cold War. That time I was in New York. I was has nothing to do. Just I was participating in this kind of anti-Desert Storm war. U.S. already want to have the first Iraqi war, and I was acting more like a street photographer. Because what can you do? I have nothing to do. I just have a camera. So that time I was thinking, what would be the condition for individual in the later? There's no ideology conflicts anymore. Yeah, the world will become very different. That's a little bit before the so-called globalization. So my thinking was the real conflicts would be between individual and the collective power, which such as culture or economic or state power or whatever kind of power. I would call it establishment. So that's also, it's a moment I start to do the theory called the study of perspective. I don't know if you're familiar with that theory. This kind of silly self-portrait of my left middle finger toward, yes, that's the one. So I did, that shows my attitude, because I really have thought about the total establishment, but I don't know, I don't have enough intellectual ground, but my intuition feels that is really, even as a modern person, you are very oppressed. Even as a Western liberal society, an individual still are very much oppressed by certain kind of power, like economic or could be any kind of like assumption for security or status, social status. And those things are so strong, and I never really experienced in communist society. So, and of course, today, if we see what happens in the world, I think still my assumption at that time, the end of beginning of 90s, are still the same. We know this so-called West civilization and the modern world have tremendous obstacles. If you see what happened in recent years, especially in U.S. or in many nations, it's going to be so-called populist culture or right culture. It's such lacking of understanding or about humanity as a whole, or to understand the really real individual power, how that would play with this so-called democracy culture, and which mainly is capitalism idea. So, of course, this kind of talk would be too short for this kind of discussion, but that's in general, I feel.
Thank you.
And also, I didn't answer how an individual can respond to this kind of condition. My answer would be to how to be aware you're individual, from what can prove you're an individual. How can you say I'm an individual? So it's not easy. We are all educated, consumed by the public definition or values. So those very beginning of the vocabulary takes a long time for a person to really gain that title as individual.
My name is Dusan Zahoransky. Yep. Okay. So I'll ask that in your projects, the craft and kind of materials proportion is very strong, like language, because as I know your work, that you're working in a quite artistically generous manner. But my favorite piece is straight from the Sichuan earthquake, like homage to the earthquake, with the steel pieces where just the steel was just straightened by you as a gesture and the anti-gesture. So it was in a way very monumental, and I like how the content and the proportion is somehow balanced in this thing. So one question is towards the role which you put into a craft as a tool to strengthen the message. One question, and also where you find somehow the balance between the investment into production and the content. And also I want to say that I've seen the photographic works in Florence, and also the last photography project about the surveillance of your so for me was a very, very strong and very fresh kind of part of your body of the work to see this easy and self-made photos with very strong
Thank you. I think you have a good observation. And it's always, it's a very relevant question about how an artist uses its language and how he controls his language. There's several characters in my practice. First, I'm very much interested in classic workmanship or skills, not to admire it, but rather to see how human at that time to solving how they solve the problem, how they understand that kind of material, and how those materials in relating to the content. What kind of meaning and why they make that kind of language so profound. There are always deeper meanings rather than just we simply appreciate the so-called beauty. I think the beauty will be the last thing to talk about, but rather to understand why in Arab nations those patterns, those structures being made, why Chinese furniture have those kind of joints, or jade or bronze, why they make it like that. So it's really related to history, related to a human's understanding about themselves. I think those works not only profoundly reflects their understanding about the human or man's or man or women's position in the universe, but also always function as a statement of doing proper, right thing, to make it right. So that kind of struggle always also in my work. But I would never think of from beginning, like the metal piece straight when you talk about, I was totally involved, desperately involved in one investigation to find out why the earthquake has to kill over 5,000 students, how this happened. So we did, I thought, as an individual, as somebody has ability to ask the question and to do the social research to find out who has been killed and what's their name, what's their birthday, in which school. I think in modern days those can be very easy, but the state holds those informations as some kind of secret. So I said, why don't I, besides being angry or frustrated, why don't I just do the research myself? So we organized the volunteers. In China, this is very, very avant-garde. You cannot even do it today. So it's kind of first civil movement. After 1 year of research, we found over 5,000 students, their birthday, the name, because everywhere is covered up. They arrest our team over a few dozen times. They destroy all the research materials. But since we just ask a very simple question, they cannot do too much to us. They just try to stop us. So gradually, I know the state will make every evidence disappear. So we managed to get all those metal, rebars from the collapsed ruins and ship it to the capital, Beijing, where my studio is. I lived there for a long time. First, we just want to protect it. We don't want those things to be disappeared, because under those ruins, thousands of students disappeared. But I don't know how to do it, do anything to it, because I don't want to do too much. I don't want it to make it too sentimental or whatever. And, nothing can really compare to the facts. Sometimes the reality is itself is so overwhelming. So finally, I come up an idea just to strip those rebars from these ruins. It takes a long time to strip one by one. We have 150 tons of rebars being manually stripped, and so it come back to the original form, but it has been through so much. So the meaning, it's the form carries the meaning, but if the form itself is very most quiet, seems nobody did anything to it. That's the kind of work I'm more satisfied, because it's a peacefully a statement.
I would just add, because your work is really totally based on the long-term social researches you are undertaking, and but I think that what is very typical for your artistic practice is the usage of emotions. What would you say to? Because I think that you were playing with the emotion of the people, trying to gain them somehow to understand what you were communicating to them. Or am I wrong?
Well, I think as a human we have temperatures. Lucky we still have emotions, and I really very much treasure those emotions. It's like in the hot summer days, you would like the wind to come, yeah. Or in the winter you would like to sit next to a fire.
Yeah.
I mean, those are so important to our state of mind to understand, yeah. Our position with the reality. So, yes, I would say those things always played some part or initiate the work.
Yeah.
But that's not enough, I think. We need some kind of aesthetic judgment, yeah. Which relate to moral or philosophical practice, yeah. Which include other people's practice, yeah. And we have to examine those emotions in certain forms.
Yeah.
Maybe let me extend before another question from the audience. Extend Dushan's question. How does relate your gallery work to your activities on the internet? Are there obviously connected, but do you consider what you do on the internet as an annex, or is it a continuation of your artistic work? How does these things relate?
This is a question people often ask to say, what is your art, what is not your art, and how those things help the others. From the beginning, almost in the early 1980s, since I can never become a successful artist, already gave up to be an artist, but rather just be a normal human being. And later, I consciously trying to kind of diminish or to denounce the attention of us artists doing artwork, rather to I do whatever I like. You can call it artwork or not, I don't really care. So that's my attitude, and I would always say, my art is related to everything I do, which is true. Relate to my interviews, relate to my talks like this, and relate to my cooking or any kind of curiosity. I think only by doing that, I have the liberal possibility, or to liberate myself from being called artist. And so I think to be artist, you have to think you're also not artist. And in most time, you think artist is not somebody who being called artist, but just a normal another person. So, and I think maybe I'm very lucky. Fortunately, I still have I survived this kind of philosophy, but not everybody can do that. I am very much aware of that, but who knows? You have to create your own status, and you have to. Seems what I have been doing, not so many people is doing, and so I do feel I have a lot of space. I don't meet so many competition, So that's why I feel I consider myself as a lucky one. And I really encourage anybody don't have to follow any kind of rules. And if you talk about the gallery work, you talk about the exhibitions, right? Yeah. And the art world is very strange world. It's very, very small, self-indulgent, self-talk, and kind of world doesn't. It's very spoiled. It's like it's not so much relate to reality. That's what I feel. So I also feel I don't have to relate to art world at all. So if one day, I cannot do it, I can be a good carpenter. I'm very good, I'm very capable in doing that. And I can be a good cook. I can open a very good restaurant. And I will enjoy my dish and cook nice dish for others. So, I have this kind of attitude. I don't use my words. I don't give a damn shit to art world. So, yeah. Sorry. I respect my friends. I never see them as a director, I say they're either my friends, I have something intellectually can communicate, but I never really think they are art directors or something.
I appreciate
my
your
honesty,
approach, of course.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Totally.
So we have one question over there.
So I have a question if architecture is for you also art, is the first question. And the second is that I visited China 2 years ago and I saw a few buildings in Beijing that you designed and I really like it. But then I decided to visit Jinhua, the architectural park. And the second question is, did you expect that this park will look like this nowadays, or because the buildings are mainly vacant and closed, and I was really surprised. So do you think it was a problem of city planning, or did you expect that this will happen?
Okay, first one I already forget.
If architecture is art.
Yes, everything's art. Everything's art, actually. Everything can be art, or everything. And the only thing cannot possibly be art is art itself. So in that sense, very often we see art is not art, but everything else is art. And as you're laughing.
No.
And talk about the Jinhua, I did the practice of architecture. I love architecture. It's a feeling you feel. It's kind of feeling you share like you're a god. You're making something which never been there, but you made it, and it will stay there for a while. So give you this kind of illusion. You designed it. But in the reality architecture, it's really about functioning, and it's about understanding human behaving, design humans, or to evoke humans' relations to the outside world. And unfortunately, we see very few architecture has that kind of integrity. Most architecture today just for the sake of make one photo, and it's not. If you walk into it, you will not really respect, the kind of details, the kind of understanding, or kind of for the usage. It can be very brutal and very shocking, how people would use so much money and effort to to make something just with this kind of self-ambition or how do you call this kind of feeling. So very often we see architectures, basically most architecture school practice like that. I don't know here, but from my experience with many architecture schools, there's very little teaching about ethics or aesthetics about architecture rather than just how to make a building looks funny. And you know, if you look at the architecture book or any design book, that even is very, very obvious. We did the architecture park you referred to, and that one we had invited international architects, famous ones to very progressive young architects in a very remote town, village type. We made a good design, but the standard of that design is really a Western standard. You know, it's not really exactly for the local to apply. The problem not come from the design, but come from the city, the planner. You know, you're hired by the city, and the city use that as a promotion of the land, because you designed that architecture park. The land price around the park made a tremendous profit for the developers, and ended up the park has nobody really taking care of, because nobody using the park. They only use that to sell the land. And so architecture very often functioning like as part of a political act. Of course, also failed as a kind of fate. Yeah.
Next question, please.
I would like to ask about your current relationship with the Chinese government and police. Do you still fear that you can be arrested because of your work, or has the situation become better for you?
I'm very bad in making that kind of judgment. That got me arrested several times, but I never think I should be arrested. I always think they made a mistake, they made a wrong move. But many of my close friends, lawyers and civil activists, still in jail, and they are much less active than me. They are much less influential, less brutal than me. So, from that, if I come from a reasonable logic, I'm in great danger. But I never feel so. You know, I never feel anybody should arrest me or something. No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
More questions? I remember in one documentary you said that using the internet or free media, to be precise, that society in China can be changed. How it can be changed? Do you have a goal, or do you have a state or utopia that you consider something worth trying to get close to?
I should say I was very naive during my. I was quite high. It's like taking drugs, but my drug was the internet. You know, I do feel if I give me 3 months of freedom of speech on the internet, I can make a revolution. And because all those things are so simple, people just don't not speak out. And you can speak out clearly, you can make a definition clearly, and those problems are not so easy so difficult to get answer. Well, of course, this is very utopia type of thinking, because the reality is much complicated. We can say even in a democratic society, you do have the so-called freedom of speech, and still you feel polarized to make a move. It's very often you feel people don't need that kind of change, and it's only your own illusion. I think I remember maybe it's Lenin made this statement that you can never really organize a revolution because the revolution prepared by itself. It's not you can really make one. And very often you see a state has been interfered by the foreign force to have this kind of sudden change, and still doesn't solve the problem, but it creates endless problems.
Yes, please.
I want to ask. Does it work? I want to ask you if in China happened something.
I think teaching is a learning process. If teaching is not a learning process, it's not worth to teach. So, but in a teaching position, not necessarily every professor act as a learning process. So that means many teachers are worthless. It's just doesn't really achieve anything. So I don't know if that answers you. Thank you.
In China and in the other world, can you feel a sort of differences regarding this issue?
Regarding what issue?
Well, the acceptance of your work.
My practice, I call it as contemporary practice. That requires a contemporary platform. That means you have freedom of speech, freedom of discussion, criticism, and competition, competitive thinking. In China, we don't have this kind of element. We are still a state-controlled ideology, and there's no real free discussion on aesthetics or philosophy. It's very liberal, but with ideology, with those very, very core mental state of mind, it's completely shut off and forbidden. So you have generations of people, because one sentence, because one writing can lose their life. My father was a poet. He was exiled for 20 years only because his poetry. His poetry is not necessarily even political, but quite liberal. So I was growing up with him in this kind of exile camps. So because that, millions of people, intellectuals, school teachers, active mind has been punished. So there's nothing left. People know there's some certain taboo you cannot touch, because if you touch it, that means you're finished. And nobody's going to even argue for that. And in the West, I don't know. My work, I don't really know how I suddenly become quite well known. I don't know for what reason. Maybe partly because I was made a lot of argument when I was in China. So they think this guy somehow quite unique. And maybe because I don't really know why it become like today. And I also don't care that much. Actually, so how I make that kind of comparison?
Yeah,
I don't really. You should tell me more about it. How you think about me, and I would discuss about it.
Yeah.
And because I don't really know what's in your mind, Really.
Well, this is one of the things about your work, is that you can approach audiences and your work around the world, and your work can mean different things for different audiences around the world.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, your last piece with the National Gallery, it means something very different if you exhibit it in West or in China. Also, your piece for Documenta, it was quite different for people in Germany, quite different for Chinese people.
First, I have to make it clear, from 93 to 2015, that's 22 years, I went back to China from New York. I never had my show in China. I made the underground books. I had a first gallery space for promote contemporary art. I curated many shows. I made tremendous exhibitions, but I never showed my work. And also, I never really even to think about to show my work until the last moment when they give back my passport. I made 5 shows in 1 month, and just to be fun, to having to challenge them. They said you're free, so I said okay. So I want to test it. What do you mean I'm free? So I said I will make a show. They said okay. Then it's most of my deals is made like this through argument. So I made 5 shows. The police are very nervous, said, wait, how can you suddenly make 5 shows in 1 month? And what's your next one? I said, I don't even know, but could be I know in the midnight, next day I would know it. So it's very hard to compare my work to show in China, because I really not have a chance to show. They canceled several of my shows before, and also even group shows with my name, the police would ask them to take down my name before the opening, or in the books they would not mention my name. Even under my work, they would take my name away. So the name can be so dangerous. I think that makes me really proud myself, because such a very, very powerful state would worry about that name to be appeared in the public. So that means, maybe artist is something, it can be quite dangerous to a society like that. And then you talk about the shows in the West. Yeah, I had a show in very different locations. Purposely to have a show in Alcatraz, which is old jail, in a market called La Bon Marché, which is like how do you call it, commercial market, and also in many museum spaces like Tate or Royal Academy or Plaza Strozzi, and very different quality, history. Many of locations, this first time they decide to do contemporary art show, and I'm sure they are using me as someone can reach different audience, and I always take the opportunity to make new works which normally I would not make, and the regular museum would not accept because I don't know what kind of thing they accept. But if you are a new institution or your institution never did a contemporary show, give me an opportunity to do something very different. I never miss that intention, and every time I did something, surprised myself.
Dear friends, we are running out of time, and we have a chance for maybe one last question. Yes, I saw some hands over there. Yes.
I would like to ask, how did you decide to become an architect?
Become architect.
How you decide to become an architect?
Same as I do everything else, I never decide to become an architect till my mom got very tired of me to stay with her. She said, I stayed at home, her house, for 6 years, doing nothing but playing poker cards with my brother. She really got tired. She said, this boy come back from the United States, 12 years, stays there, doesn't have a passport, doesn't have money, or never even married, and just stay home, play poker. And my mom is very conservative, nice lady, and believes hardworking. Think this boy is really wasted. So when we always have an argument, and she's very temperament. She said, just get out. I said, okay. I was waiting for that moment. So I take the opportunity to find a location in a village, build an illegal house, which you cannot really apply to build, but it's a kind of farmer's land. I said, I rented your place. They said, yes. I said, I want to build a house. They said, yes, it's legal, but we will not stop you. So I said, that's good enough. So I built my house really for the liberty of, if I can build it, after they turn down, I already succeed, because I just want to build a house. So I built the house is still there. It has been there almost 20 years. And we have 40 cats in there. And since then, I stay there very happy. And we have a company called Fake Design. In there, we start to do architecture, because they all think any architects, the top architects, Herzog, Dimron, or whoever, come to the house, they all very impressed. They always say, oh, you're the architects. Okay, I said, yeah, why not? Whoever asks me to do something, can be very small, like public toilet, or very big city planning. I always say, yes, I can do it. I believe myself have the ability, has the so-called intelligence to handle those things. Those only need a very common knowledge and experience of, to understand life. So I think I'm capable, and has been proved that I'm a very good architect, but that's how I started my architecture. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this last answer, and I hope you will hold it close to your heart and use similar strategies to become successful as artists and also with your family.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming to the Academy of Fine Arts.
Good.
And let me repeat that the exhibition of Ai Weiwei at the National Gallery starts on Thursday night and will be on view for next 6 months or so.
Even longer. We have a couple of projects made by Ai Weiwei.
And the museum spend all their money. They have no money for next exhibition, so they just make it much longer, and which is good for me.
Yeah. We are very rich, of course, at the National Gallery, and are proud of this. And so that's why the biggest and the major project will stay until January next year, actually. So you are warmly welcomed, of course, on Thursday. And join us, please.
And The rest time we can take selfies if you want.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So,